Now that you have basic understanding of how communicable diseases are passed from one person to another, we are going to look at some public health approaches to control infectious disease. As we talk about each method, think about which chain in the chain of infection we're addressing and trying to break. That is how we address infectious disease. We try to interrupt the chain of infection. Let's look at the public health strategies to reduce the burden of communicable diseases on a population. They include barrier protection, immunizations, screening and case findings, treatment and contact treatment, and finally efforts to maximize treatment effectiveness and prevent resistance. We'll start by looking at barriers against communicable diseases. Two terms that I hope you're familiar with are isolation and quarantine. These two methods provide a barrier between infected individuals or potentially infected individuals and healthy people. Isolation is when we take a person who is sick and separate them from the rest of the population. It is used to separate ill persons who have a communicable disease from those who are healthy. Quarantine is used to separate people who have been exposed to a sick person who may not be sick yet, in case they're carriers. So if you've been exposed to an infectious disease, you may be quarantined and kept away from healthy individuals who weren't exposed to the disease, and you'll be watched to see if you finally do become ill. This is called quarantine. Some of the barriers to the spread of infection include things we're familiar with, like hand washing, bed nets, condoms, and face masks. I'm now going to rely on our textbook for their video on this section, Barriers Against Communicable Diseases.
Examples of barriers to the spread of infections are as old as hand washing and as new as insecticide-impregnated bed nets, which have had a major impact on the rate of malaria transmission. Barrier protection, such as condoms, is believed by many to be the most successful intervention to prevent sexually transmitted diseases. The use of masks may be effective in reducing the spread of disease in healthcare institutions, such as hospitals. The same measures may be preventative in the community at large and are a routine part of winter weather habits in much of Asia. A special form of barrier protection consists of separating individuals with disease from the healthy population to prevent exposure. As we discussed previously, sanitariums had a major impact in reducing outbreaks of TB in the 1800s and the first half of the 1900s. Today, once again, we are faced with issues of isolation and occasionally have to legally enforce quarantine.